Jim, do you have a short comment you wish to make?
Yes, I mean, I understand that the next part is to tentatively accept this budget, and I think that's completely irresponsible of you without understanding how you're going to make $2 million of cuts. And I think it's completely irresponsible that you did not anticipate this. I understand you were told 15%, but you understood the change in the administration that happened in January. And it was very likely that you were going to get cut more than that. And you can say that you came up with all of these scenarios, and now that they come into play, you're not happy with the scenarios. That means you didn't really think about the scenarios. And so I really think it behooves you to think about how you're going to make this $2 million cut before you approve it, send it to the county, and just say, well, we're going to figure it out in the next 9 days.
Can we get your name for the record?
Neil Seftor.
My name is Neil Seftor. I live in Hopewell Township.
Thank you. Okay, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay.
Neil, we're not all together on that number. You should know that. We're still doing this.
Okay.
Doing what?
It doesn't finalize until the 31st.
Well, you're tentatively accepting a budget to submit to the county, aren't you?
Well, we have to have a budget as a placeholder to the county tomorrow.
Well, I think it's an unreasonable placeholder.
Yeah, I mean, you have a point there, but the issue here is that obviously 3 days ago we were told about these numbers. We do have a number of scenarios based on numbers that, let me explain this, that Governor Christie's appointed the Commissioner of Education gave us, okay? And obviously there's a big disconnect in that administration.
And that's been apparent for the past 3 months.
I know.
You couldn't even figure out whether they were going to apply for raises.
Okay, okay, but,
So the fact that
yeah.
that you assumed that you were actually going to get a 15% cut is unreasonable. And you should have anticipated the consequences.
No.
And if you did go through all these scenarios that you have, and one of them would have been that you had a significant reduction in state aid, and you would have a plan, and you could tell us what you're going to do to cut that other $2 million. The fact that you say that you have these plans, but you're not happy with them now, means you didn't really think through the plans. You just came up with something as a placeholder.
I think it's actually a good point, but I would add, I think we did talk about
Yeah.
the scenario where we got zero
Yeah,
from
exactly.
the state, and that was
Why can't you tell us that now?
because I think there's still additional pieces of information that we need before we can make a full decision. I think it's what Tom said is we don't know where. You know, we have to, again, come together as a group and figure out where we're going to close the gap. So that's, you know, you I guess you have to a certain extent, react as the information comes in. But I don't think it's necessarily fully fair to Tom and Bob's defense to say that they haven't scenario planned for this particular scenario we're in. Is that true, Tom?
Correct. And as a matter of fact, we presented in all of the previous budget addresses that we've done in the board, we looked at a $1.9 million cut that hinged on a couple of things. It did outline staff members, and it did talk about a change in health benefits. At this point, we're not at a point to react on any of those. You know, and the next question is concessions. There's a lot of discussion going on between now and then. I think it would be irresponsible to come out and say we're cutting 15 teachers, and then tomorrow we get legislature that changes or a concession that significantly reduces that and says, oh, no, now we can save all those. What we did was we presented a number of teachers, and you heard someone mention today that one of those we mentioned were technology teachers on the elementary level and the middle school level, paraprofessionals, which were mentioned, concessions, custodians, and support staff, all mentioned previously. Now we're at a point where to provide specifics, I feel would, given the variables that are in play, would get more people upset.
And every year we strike a budget based on the governor's proposal for budget. That budget is not approved by the legislator until just before July 1st. Am I correct?
Correct.
So the legislator could strike down that budget, and I mean it's in a state of flux always till July 1st.
Right, I understand.
So,
I guess
I mean,
my point is,
yeah.
if you're going to submit this budget where it says that you need $4 million in reduction and you found $2 million, if you're going to submit that, you should have decisions made that support it. Whether that changes and then whether the budget can go back up after those changes happen, that's one thing. But to submit a budget without even a concept of how you're going to meet it is not reasonable. If you can't list the cuts right now, then submit a budget that's $2 million higher. I mean, you're being inconsistent. You have to pick one or the other. You can't say we're going to have a limited budget, but we're not going to make cuts. You either have a limited budget and you tell us what the cuts are likely to be, or you say a higher budget and you say we're doing it because we don't want to make cuts.
I don't want to
You
get
can't have
into
it both ways.
I don't want to get into a debate, but we did. And if you look, we talked about a reduction of staff. And we are submitting a budget with a reduction of staff.
Okay, well,
Who
tell
those
us what the
teachers-
$2 million reduction in staff is.
Okay, for the second time, it was technology teachers, paraprofessionals, support staff. That totaled $1.9 million.
How many positions is that?
We have 10
How many FTEs is it
12.
for $2 million?
12 plus a change in health benefits.
Has that already gone through?
No, it has not gone through. Exactly the
And
reason
is
why
that
it's a
going to go through
variable.
in the next 9 days?
We don't know.
What do you think?
No, I don't think, I think that was part of, from a budgeting perspective, we think we're,
Yeah.
we put it, we've said amongst ourselves that we think it's responsible to include that from a budget perspective, that change will occur, we'll be able to achieve that. I don't think it's a guarantee that we're going to get that either. That's something, like every budget, you're looking into the future saying, okay, what's a responsible, what do we think is likely? And in that instance, I think we collectively said, okay, relying on the expertise of Bob and Tom, that we think that that's an item that's going to be achieved.
And that's fine. And it's fine if you have those 12 positions laid out. I think you should avoid the sleight of hand and say, well, we're going to talk about it in the next 9 days, and we're going to talk to the public. If you have these already chosen, spell it out here instead of trying to hide it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want this low budget, fine. Say we want the low budget and we're going to cut all this stuff. If you don't want it and you want to keep the positions and you're not going to take the public hit, then say that we're going to have a higher budget. I mean, frankly, the way you explained the tax revaluation and the tax increase was not really relevant. I mean, basically everybody's property went down, so their taxes went up. In net, the taxes are going to go up slightly. You made it look worse for them by the way you showed it. So, I mean, you're not selling your plan here. I mean, you're basically hiding key aspects of it because you're afraid of it.
Just so you know, this is probably the 8th budget presentation we've made. We listed all of those prior to.
Okay, why aren't you listing it here?
Do you have it on your laptop?
Why aren't you saying, okay, we need to cut $4 million. 2 is going to come from the change in benefits and the health plan. And the other 2 is going to come from these 12 positions that we're going to cut.
We did in several other presentations.
Okay,
And
but
year
this
we
is the
reduced-
one that you're adopting tonight, and
I'm
you're
gonna
not
make a
telling us
motion
the
that we need to
details of
move
it.
on here. This has gotten to be ridiculous.
Oh, it is ridiculous to ask you to justify your budget?
What? Yeah, well, I think we've done a pretty good job of presentating this to the public in the past. We've had countless meetings about this, and now you're hitting us up on things that have been presented in the past. And I think
No,
we need to
I'm
move
hitting
on.
you up for things that you're presenting right now on the budget that you are right now going to vote on.
So, I would say is, Mr. Seftor, your frustration is felt by all of us
Yeah,
up here.
right.
We're living this, we're working through this, and as Ben said, we've presented a number of times, and there's a number of presentations yet to come, because there's a number of decisions that will impact the budget no matter what we in this room do. So I would ask you, and I would ask the rest of the public, to continue to pay attention, continue to make your voices heard, and I appreciate that you came out tonight. We have a lot of business to keep moving through, and we're going to move on.
I understand. All I ask is that you be consistent with what you're presenting. If you're presenting a low budget, say the cuts you're going to make. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jim.